Hey guys, today we're going to go over how to frame for a non-full height sliding door on our Flex series. Before getting started, I want to go over one major framing component when it comes to framing for our non-full height sliding doors. As you can see, we use a flex track on the ceiling for our non-full height sliding doors. If you have a full height sliding doors, that's going to be framed slightly different, and we're going to go ahead and do a separate video on framing for a full height sliding door. So for now, we'll go ahead and get started on our non-full height sliding door. With my flex track attached to the ceiling, I can go ahead and measure for my vertical flex studs within the door opening. Quick note on the flex track attached to the ceiling, you want to make sure you have the proper amount of flex L brackets within that track before moving on with the rest of your framing. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead, we'll measure for our door opening flex studs. To measure for your door opening studs, you'll measure from the floor to the ceiling and subtract 3/4 of an inch. This measurement allows the flex stud to go into the ceiling track and run directly to the floor on both sides of the door opening. So go ahead, take a measurement on this side of the opening, come over approximately 38 inches, and measure for another flex stud for the door opening. I'll go ahead, take my measurements, and get my studs cut. With my door opening studs cut, I'll go ahead and get them installed. I'll take the flex stud, place it into the ceiling track, and run it all the way to the floor. From there, take the L bracket, slide your L bracket into the center portion of the flex stud, and attach the bracket to the stud using a 3/4 inch framing screw. Now, this stud's coming off an existing wall. We want to make sure that this stud's perfectly plumb. So if you need to make an adjustment to that stud to make it plumb, go ahead and do so. I did a quick video on coming off existing wall, so go ahead and check that out. So with this stud already plumbed up, we'll go ahead and install the stud on this side of the door opening. So again, you're going to go into the flex track and down directly to the floor. With my door opening studs installed, we'll move on how to properly space for your door opening. Before spacing your door opening, make sure one of your flex studs within the door opening has been established. This means that it has been plumbed up and anchored. In this case, we're coming off an existing wall, so we've already went ahead and plumbed up this stud and attached it to the wall. In the ceiling track, all you'll need to do is tighten the set screw in the L bracket, and that'll lock that into place. If you have a door opening within the center of a run, go ahead and set one of those studs and get your floor track cut so you can anchor that stud in place and it cannot move from there. Once you have one of the door opening studs established, we can go ahead and set our spacing for the door opening. When determining the width of the opening, go ahead and take a look at your drawing. The drawing is going to tell you what that opening width needs to be. Now, the measurement is going to be from the most inside point of the flex stud over to the same point on the other stud. Majority of the time, the measurement is going to be 3'2" or 38 inches. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and get our door opening set. Since our door opening is 38 inches, I went ahead and cut a flex stud at 38 inches to be used as a spacer. Now the flex stud's actually going to be our horizontal for our non-full height sliding door. So we'll use it as a spacer now, and then later on in this video, we're going to use it as our horizontal stud for the door opening. So first, starting at the top of the opening, take your spacer and place it tight against your door opening stud that has been established. With the spacer tight to that stud, go ahead and bring the opposite side door opening stud tight to the spacer. With the stud tight to the spacer, go ahead and remove your door opening spacer and tighten the set screw to lock the vertical flex stud in place. With the top of the opening secured, we'll go ahead and move to the floor. At the bottom of the opening, take your door opening spacer and place it tight against the established stud. Then bring the opposite side door opening stud tight to the door spacer. With that in place, you can now take your measurement for the flex track on the opposite side of the opening. To measure for our flex track on the floor, measure from the existing wall or the flex post to the most inside point of the vertical flex stud within the door opening. The flex track is going to butt directly into that flex stud. I'll go ahead, take my measurement, and get our flex track installed. Before installing the flex track on the floor, install your flex L brackets into the flex track. Make sure that the leg of the flex L bracket is facing the same direction as the L brackets in the ceiling track. This will help when it comes time to space the studs. So we'll go ahead and slide in our flex L brackets. With our flex L brackets in the flex track, we'll go ahead and place our floor track. First thing you'll want to do is slide the flex L bracket into the flex stud in the door opening. With that in place, go ahead and attach the L bracket to the flex stud using 3/4 inch framing screws. With our L bracket attached to the door opening stud, we can now attach the flex track to the floor. You'll want to use an anchoring screw that's appropriate for the type of floor you are working with. We run our anchoring screws every 4 to 6 feet. With the first anchoring screw at the door opening, we're actually going to run that screw through the hole in the flex L bracket. This will help provide strength for that door opening. We'll go ahead and get our floor track installed. With our floor track installed, we can now move on to installing our vertical flex studs. With our door opening framed and our flex track attached to the floor, we can now measure for our vertical flex studs running from ceiling track to floor track. To measure for the vertical flex studs, measure from the floor to the ceiling and subtract 1.5 inches. This measurement is going to allow you to put the studs into the ceiling track and the floor track, as well as leave a gap at the top and the bottom to allow you to move those vertical flex studs. Go ahead, take our stud measurements and get them cut. With the vertical flex studs cut, I'll go ahead and get them installed. As you can see, I've already went ahead and installed one of the vertical flex studs. I'm going to show you how to install the flex stud for the center of the opening. Now this flex stud is going to play a role with the door opening, so it's important that we position this correctly. I'll go ahead and install this vertical stud. To install the vertical flex stud, place it into the ceiling track and into the floor track. Once in place, slide your flex L bracket into the center of the stud. Then, using a 3/4 inch framing screw, pick up on the flex stud slightly so that it is not touching the floor track or the ceiling track. Then run your 3/4 inch framing screw into the flex stud. We usually use 2 screws per L bracket. So I'll go ahead, I'll get the top attached and the bottom attached. As mentioned, the vertical flex stud on the center of this wall is going to be a part of the door opening. The reason being is our doors are surface mounted. Therefore, the doors are going to slide over this fixed panel, whether it be a glass panel or a solid panel. That's going to be design dependent. For non-full height sliding doors, we're going to have a horizontal flex stud running between the door opening studs, as well as this door opening stud and this center stud here. Now, depending on the design of your project, you may have a clear story that's going across the entire front of the opening. And in that case, the position of this flex stud is not essential. Now, if you have a fixed pane of glass here that's running floor to ceiling and you have a sliding door, then this opening here on the other side of the door opening will need to be at least 38 inches. The reason being is that gives enough room for the door to fully open. Now, with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and set the spacing for our stud between the center stud and the door opening stud. For setting the spacing between our door opening stud and the center stud for our sliding door opening, I'm going to use the same technique we used for the door opening. I'm going ahead and cut another stud at 38 inches to be used as a spacer because again, we're going to use this as our horizontal stud. So I'm going to go ahead and place the horizontal stud tight against this door opening stud because we know this is plumb already. Then we're going to bring our center stud tight to our 38-inch stud. Okay, once in place, go ahead and tighten the set screw to lock it in place. With the vertical stud locked in place, we'll go ahead and move to the floor and repeat the process. Repeat the process on the floor. Take your 38-inch stud and place it tight against the vertical door opening stud. Then bring your vertical center stud tight to the horizontal stud. Once tight, go ahead and tighten your set screw to lock the stud in place. With our vertical studs established for the door opening, we can go ahead and move on to installing the horizontal studs. Before installing the horizontal studs for the height of your door opening, it's important to know how to determine what that height needs to be. You need to look at the provided drawings to determine the height. I've already highlighted a drawing for you to show you which dimension you're looking for. This dimension is going to be from the floor to the bottom edge of the horizontal flex stud. Now, it's important that you maintain this height because if you have any type of pre-ordered door, it's going to be based on that height. So we'll go ahead and we'll measure for our door opening height. When marking the location of your horizontal studs, we typically use the vertical stud in the center of the opening to set our door height. Now, if you have doors that are going to be ordered after the fact, any type of glass door, the height of the opening is not really going to matter because you're going to measure for that glass door based on what your opening calls for. Now, if you have any type of pre-order door, you're going to want to make sure to take measurements at all three studs and find the highest point. If you don't do that, you run the risk of that door rubbing on the floor. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and take our measurement from the floor to the measurement that we were given on our drawing. Now typically, we will mark where the bottom edge of that stud is going to be. So when we go to set our horizontal studs, we're going to set that stud right on the mark that we had made. So we'll go ahead and we'll get our studs prepped and we'll get them up here and get them installed. Take your 38-inch flex stud that you would use as a spacer and slide in a flex L bracket onto each end of the stud. Then place that horizontal stud on your mark that you had made for your door opening height. Slide the L bracket into the vertical flex stud and attach the L bracket to the stud using 3/4 inch framing screws. Now, typically I'll run one just to hold it in place so I can go ahead and level the other side of the horizontal stud. So take your torpedo level, place it on the horizontal stud, and make sure it is perfectly level. Slide your L bracket onto the vertical flex stud and attach it using your 3/4 inch screws. With the horizontal stud installed within our door opening, we'll go ahead and move on to the horizontal stud on this side of the opening. Slide in your flex L brackets into the horizontal stud you would use as a spacer for this side of the opening. Place your horizontal stud tight against the center vertical stud of the opening. Then slide your L bracket so the screws coming through align the holes for this L bracket. What this does is it aligns these two flex studs together. Then go ahead and slide in the L bracket on this side of the opening. That way it can help you hold it in place. With that in place, take your 3/4 inch framing screws and attach this side L bracket through the stud. I'm going to run one screw to help hold that in place. I'm going to take my torpedo level and level this horizontal stud. With this horizontal stud, I'll go ahead and attach it and run another attaching screw on this side. With the horizontal studs installed, go through and tighten the set screws on the flex L brackets to lock the opening in place and ensure that it stays plumb and square. With our horizontal studs installed, the framing for our non-full height sliding door is complete. Something I wanted to bring up is we are going to have our sliding door rail attaching to these horizontal studs. We call this sliding door rail a C rail. I will do a video on that later on. But if you have any questions on your framing for sliding doors, please contact our office.